Mostly because I can, actually, now that we're live, I'm going to say that again. I like to shave my head because it's easy to do. It's something I can do on my own. I don't have to drive anywhere and sit in a chair and wait for somebody else and wait to get a turn to sit in the chair. So, and I can do it at 4 a.m. when my kids are sleeping, and, nobody, and, there's no dependency. I just get it done. So yeah, shaving my head is the way that I cut my hair. I cut my own hair. And then this thing is kind of, my daughter kind of likes it. So I've decided that I'm going to give it a try. So.
Good deal. Yeah. I thought I was the only person who was like hating. I mean, Great Clips, that's where I go. Great Clips has improved. They got the app and it can tell me like if I can just kind of run on in there and get my hair cut. But wife has banned shaving my head though. But my brother shaved his head when he was in middle school, and he has never had anything else but that ever since.
That's funny. Yeah. Yeah. First of all, what's up, Noah?
Hey, Dave. Turns out I had a little bit of time after all, but I'll probably have to drop off early.
Okay. Well, we'll have you for as long as we can. So that'll be good. So cool. I don't think you've probably met Aaron. I think Aaron stopped coming to these regularly before you started with the end of his.
Swapped.
Yeah, basically. Yeah.
Hello, Noah.
So Aaron has been on the show. You may have heard him. Aaron Olson was on at one point. A very non-traditional background, not a computer science kind of guy. Kind of just started out working, I guess more operations, you'd say, right? Just kind of.
Yep. That's what I keep falling back into. So.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't just stay shaved, right? I go probably, 4 or 5 months in between. And so it grows as actually maybe not that long. I think the contract I'm working on currently, I'm about 5 months into a 6-month contract. And this is the second time I've shaved during this contract. So I don't know, 3-4 months. It's when I start seeing my hair kind of curl a little bit by my ears, that's when I'm like, oh man, it's time, get rid of it. So that's kind of my indicator.
Nice.
Yeah, I let it go for a while,
and it never affects the business or anything.
No. I mean, it never really gets long enough that anybody other than me is annoyed by its length. The facial hair, I don't shave a lot. I shave, whenever I decide that. Actually, my lip, right? The mustache I can't stand. When it starts getting a little bit longer and I can feel it on my lip, I despise that. So that's kind of my trigger to shave as well. So
I think you need to make this your new avatar.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Yeah, I have that, the picture, I've got the collared shirt and everything, looking all respectable like and all that stuff. That's what I've been using for a long time. I knew that I was going to need a headshot. So when we took our holiday family photo one year, I was like, hey, could you just get one of me, solo? And so that's been kind of my go-to LinkedIn and Twitter and everywhere else image. But yeah, maybe I do need an update on that. The true modern me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, of course, I probably need to lose about 10 more pounds before I'm really ready to take the new photo.
How are you doing on that?
Doing good. The number, right? My actual weight, the progress on that has really slowed, but I'm not that concerned about that, right? I have gotten under 200, which I think is kind of a big milestone. But really, I'm feeling better. I'm faster and jump higher and doing all the things, that I want to do. So that's what matters. And so, I barely got under 200. I think, between 185 and 190 is my ideal weight. And that's where I am the fastest and quickest and, most mobile and all of that stuff. And so, I think, eventually I'll probably get there, but I'm not all that concerned with it. So I did, in the Facebook group, I said, hey, I'm going to do 30 days hardcore diet, all of that stuff. I've really been slacking on my weight training. I haven't been hitting the weights as much as I should be. And I'll get back into that too. But I said 30 days hardcore. And so I got to day 25 on that. And that was my daughter's birthday. And I was like, oh shit. Right. I was like, well, we're going to go out to pizza on her birthday. And I was like, well, you know what, I made this commitment to 30 days, but there are more important things than that, right? So,
Yep.
you know, I'm going to experience my daughter's birthday fully, be there, you know, present with her, do all of that stuff. So I ate the pizza and everything. I said, all right, you know what, I blew it on my 30-day challenge. So, you know what, 30 days starts tomorrow. So I've basically, you know, I think I've got about a week left on my 30 days that's actually going to happen. You know, following the 25 days that was, no, that was the failed first attempt. Although I don't really consider it a failure. I mean, I basically made it to 35, and then, you know, or 35. I basically, I mean, I was there. I just, you know, but you know, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on. You know, 30 days is. I mean, it's a thing to do, and it's good, and it gets me, you know, back closer to where I should be, but it's not the be all end all, right? I got to figure out what my life is going forward, right? What kind of lifestyle I want to live, and how I want to go about treating my body and fueling myself and all of that stuff, right? And, you know, being hardcore in the long term is, it's feasible. I could do it, but it's not going to be what really brings me close to my family. I think I've learned that much. So it's not going to be my forever. I'm kind of thinking maybe something along the lines, though, of actually my son said this might be the way I should do it. And they've been talking about it too. They're like, when's your diet over so that we can, you know, this stuff. Right. So, I mean, I know I can't just do this forever as much as, well, I mean, even in the absence of my family, you know, I want to have some chips, you know, as chips and crackers every now and then as well. Right. So, but, you know, I don't know. I probably would go hardcore if it was just me. But my son said, well, why don't you do something like, you know, 30 days hardcore and then take a week, you know, away from that, and just maybe kind of cycle something along those lines. So I'm like, well, yeah, that's probably along the lines of where, you know, something like that. So I don't know. I still haven't figured out what my long-term, you know, lifestyle is going to be, but I think I'm kind of narrowing in on it a little bit.
Perfect. Well, yeah, whenever you get close to some of those goals, you end up going, you look at that number, and then you end up saying, you know what, maybe that number's not so important, but I'm pretty happy with where I've gotten. So you must have hit that as well.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm still heavier than I should be, and I'm still not the badass on the basketball court that I know I can be, you know, which is really small potatoes in the grand scheme of things, right? I mean, I feel better, and I have the energy to play with my kids and all of that stuff that actually matters. And, you know, being a badass basketball player, well, you know, in a sense, it doesn't matter. And in another sense, it makes me feel good about myself, right? You know, I mean, when I am able to, you know, do some of the things that I know I can do, and when, you know, the other team knows that their best player needs to defend me, that, you know, I mean, that, you know, as petty as it may sound, that, you know, it brings a degree of satisfaction to me that, you know, that is good, and it's nice, right? So,
are you in an organized league?
No, I'm not. Well, what you know, I kind of do once in a while. Whenever somebody, you know, it's usually my high school buddies that I played with.
Okay.
You know, they'll once in a while say, "Hey, let's get in a league." And you know, I'm never the instigator. I never say, "Hey," you know, I never set out to get people in a league. But when people ask me to get in a league, then I pretty much always say yes. So, you know, I probably play in, you know, a few leagues each year. But yeah, generally I'm not in a league. I just, you know, pick up ball with a bunch of other old men, you know, old suburban dudes, you know. So that's the extent of it.
Jason, one of the other guys from the mastermind group, he was in the NCAA. I forget how far he made it, but he made it pretty far. And so he's got his side leagues going on, and every now and then he'll be like, guys, I can't be there, basketball, and it always comes first. And I was always wondering, how hardcore like are those leagues, and does it ever drop off? But it seems like, I don't know, it must be pretty fun, because when he gets into those leagues, he takes it very seriously.
I am not like that at all. I mean, you know, when I, you know, when the clock's running and I'm between those lines, I'm as intense as anybody. But, you know, I mean, win or lose is, you know, I was that guy, right? I was the competitive maniac, you know, when I was young. And I think, you know, that's probably part and parcel of being my gender, right? And, having youth. But I think that's something I've left far behind. I step on a basketball court to play a game, and it's, I'm going to, slap my opponent on the ass and tell him nice shot instead of telling, hey, dickhead, you're trying to psych them out or, instigate them into making mistakes like I used to do, So yeah, it's a very different approach than I used to have.
What about the kids though? Do they get to beat you or no?
That's a really interesting question. I've heard recently in some podcasts about some research about rats, and that in their play, right, they kind of have like wrestling play and stuff like that, that the larger rats, that if they don't let the smaller rats win some of the time, then the smaller rats will stop playing with them, right? My kids, I've kind of, especially, stuff like chess and some of those things, I've kind of taken the approach that I'm not going to let them win. And, down the road someday when they are able to beat me legitimately, it's going to be that much more rewarding, and that they're going to get so much more out of that. But, 2 of my 3 kids have decided that they just don't want to play chess anymore. And I wonder if I have messed up, right, in taking that approach. One of them is badass, and she actually did beat me once. It was mostly because I kind of wasn't fully paying attention, but she did, right. I kind of was not thinking about it, and I left my queen exposed, and she took it, and of course, I mean, she capitalized on my mistake, right. It's not like that it didn't have anything to do with her, right. But she totally jumped on it when I was distracted and messed up. So she beat me, and it was fantastic. But I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about.
And she still plays though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she was in her, I guess it was her 2nd grade year. She's going into 5th this year, or no, 3rd grade. She won the K3. They have they did, and last year they didn't have the chess club, which I mean, that's a whole other story. But she was in the chess club, and they have a tournament every year, and they kind of split it up so that there's the kindergarten through 3rd grade, and then there's the 4th through 6th. She was the champion for the K3, and then she played a 5th grader for the overall championship, and she had him beat. I mean, she had a huge advantage, and then she made one mistake, just kind of same thing I did, right? Just kind of distracted and didn't think it through. She made a mistake where she wound up losing that match, and so she was the runner up for the whole school. But yeah, I mean, she's into it, and she loves it. So going into 5th grade this year.
Thinking about that, I could definitely see someone getting frustrated very quickly if they lose all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying about wanting to give them the satisfaction of that real victory one day, but I don't think most people, and especially not kids, could look that far ahead, and endure it long enough.
Yeah.
In terms of constant defeat until they get to that point.
Yeah. I'm really rethinking that position, So maybe I have messed up by taking that stance. And it's not like I never let them win at anything, right? And with wrestling and stuff, I let them get on top and all of that kind of stuff. But I don't know.
Yeah, I think people most enjoy playing games when they have an opponent of comparable skill, maybe a little better, maybe a little worse, but close.
Yeah. I think that makes sense. But it's fun anyway, and my son loves playing games with me, but I wonder, maybe he does lose interest a little quicker if I don't, just kind of throw the game. And I do, I'll make mistakes and kind of make it look like I messed up, sometimes, but usually not catastrophically so that I lose the game. But, I don't know. It's not really a matter of competitive. It's more of, I want them to improve rather than me just letting them, but it's, I don't know. That's the shitty thing about being a parent, is that you never know if you're doing the right thing until it's too late.
No, that's for sure. It is impossible to tell. Yeah. So you're all done with school now, Aaron?
I am almost done. I have a project I have to do both for work, and it'll be my final project for the degree. So that the majority of the migration for all these users for the services that we do will happen tonight between 6 p.m. and midnight. And then there's a few more things I got to set up, but basically I have to document this whole process and then I turn that in. So it's definitely pretty low key right now. So
cool. Yeah.
What are you going to school for?
I was just getting my CIT degree. So computer information technology. I always forget what it is.
I see.
And especially since I've said this before, but 2 years into the degree, I ended up with the opportunity to start a business with a few other people. And so I was going to get the degree, to make sure my employment was secure. And now it doesn't look like I'll need it for anything. So, but I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish it. I don't want to go to college twice and not finish. So, and now I'm just close.
You know what? It's always good to have. You never know when it might open a door for you that it wouldn't have otherwise. I knew a guy who was in real estate. And, you wouldn't think that you'd ever need a college degree doing that. And he was just an excellent sales guy, but it took him a lot longer to reach a sales management position because he didn't have a college degree. So, yeah, you just never know when it comes in handy. So it's good.
No, it's a great insurance plan, and
yeah,
or hopefully it will be. I don't know if I'll need it or not, but it'll be there if I do. So that's the important thing, I think.
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of funny that, it's really the bias of people that prevents you from, getting things because of not having it. But, bias is the real world, right? If that's the nature of things, you've got to prepare yourself for the nature of things.
Uh-huh. And the people who I've always worked for and now work with on this new company, they don't care about school at all. So like they don't even want to know. They have no idea I was going back to school because they wanted me forever and they wanted to keep using me for various projects. And so even if I said like, hey, they'd be like, stop that. So we'll give you more money. Just stop going down that road.
Yeah.
I didn't really want to be stuck with them either. So
yeah. How's your week been, Noah?
It's been up and down a bit. I started working on a project at the beginning of this week, or a day or so into it, and it's involves some UI work in JavaScript, and I'm working with another guy on it, but I have like zero knowledge in that area, so I've kind of been dependent on him and just sort of a little lost in it, not sure what exactly we needed to do. But we sat down and had a meeting at least on Friday and clarified some things. So I'm feeling better about it at this point going forward to next week. But it was a rough week for me because of that.
Yeah. Feeling lost is one of the worst things, right? Just feeling like you don't know what the hell you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's been probably one of the most frustrating things about the new job is, like I started to feel very comfortable in my last position and, just familiar with the product, the technology, the code we were working on. And while I still have all the, general development experience I got from that, all the other specific knowledge is useless now. And in some ways it's like starting from scratch. Like I'm a complete newbie all over again.
Yeah, there were a couple times that I never really, well, that's not completely true. I have done a couple projects that were different stack. So I guess, but that was the thing that worried me was that I've done .NET for all of my career, and then all of a sudden to jump to a Ruby on Rails project is like, well, am I an entry-level developer now? What does this mean, right?
Yeah.
So, and clearly you're not, right? It doesn't make any sense that all of that experience is for naught. And really, you the lessons learned apply generally.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You do have a steep learning curve for the technology itself and all of that stuff, and all of those little nuances and tooling, right? That's one of the bigger things too, right? It's something that doesn't really get mentioned all that much, but using different tools means you got to learn how to use those tools, and the speed, right? I mean, I am absolutely deadly with Visual Studio, and and I mean, I'm no slouch at Vim, but I'm not I'm not a badass there, right? So it's it's a different story.
Yeah, when I started working there, I'd never used Git before. Well, okay, that's not exactly true. I used it like a couple of times on little personal projects, but very, very basically, right? So that was a huge learning curve for me, because I was used to Perforce. I don't know if you ever used that, but it's a more traditional version control system. So, but yeah, I just learning that and getting better with it has already helped a lot there. It was a huge hurdle to begin with.
Well, it gets a lot harder to learn than it should be, right? I mean, it is a fantastic, powerful tool that does so much goodness, and it's wonderful. But man, the interface is, I mean, you issue the same command with different arguments, and it does something completely different, right? It's I mean, no question that it's wonderful, but it's harder to learn than it should be. Honestly, I think Mercurial is the best of the distributed version control systems, in my opinion. Right? Of course, that's nothing is ever objectively the best, right? But it's so much more straightforward, and it basically does everything that Git does. It has some philosophical differences, and a few of the things that Git does natively are they're bundled plugins. All you have to do is enable them, right? So I mean, but it takes a little bit different approach about whether you should be able to modify history and some of that stuff. Git, it basically says modify history. That's what you should do. You're trying to make your commit log readable and nice and all of that stuff. So modify history. Yes, Mercurial is a little more, history is history. You can't change it. It should be a record of everything that's happened to get to here. And oh yeah, you can install these plugins to go ahead and install history, but it's not, it's not the default way of doing things. It's not the recommended way of doing things, which I guess that's kind of a distinction without a difference, right? I mean, you can do anything in either one of them. Mercurial is just easier, but I think GitHub has made it such that Git wins, and it is what we use, and so be it. That's it. But yeah, it puts a barrier to learning for new people to it.
Yeah, and the company I'm working for is very big on modifying commit history, making it clean. So that makes it more complicated, I think, and it threw me for a big loop when I was starting out. I had some really screwed up code that I was trying to pick through, and totally confused about why I had these commits in there that seemed to be duplicated and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's confusing till you get used to it, for sure. Yeah.
So how'd you end up learning it? Just by using it day in, day out?
There was that, and then there's this book online. You may have seen it. I don't know. It's called Pro Git. It's freely available. So I started reading it. And
is that the one that the paper version has a black cover with yellow letters? Am I thinking of the right thing?
I think so. Okay. I think the author is Scott Chacon is his name.
Oh, okay. Chacon?
Yeah. It's really well written, though. He explains it very, very well. So it helped me a lot.
Cool. Good. Thank you. Because I'm still going down that road. So I've gone to a few too many workshops, like developer workshops, and then they're like, okay, get this from Git. And I'm like, what the heck is this? So I'm trying to follow along. And I did that for probably 4 different workshops. And then I'm like, all right, I got to go on Pluralsight. I got to go on YouTube and find a tutorial and actually figure out what's going on here. So I don't get lost in the very beginning every time. So.
Okay, so I am going to put those into, 2 things into the Slack. One is that book itself. I just Googled, so hopefully that's the best link for it. It may not be the best. But the other thing too, every time I talk to people about Git, I keep referencing this blog post by Tom Preston Werner. who is one of the founders of GitHub and the guy who had the idea for GitHub. It's not going to help with learning how to use Git. It's more of a story about Git, but it's really, really good at explaining the why about Git, and just kind of the approach of it and what it means to use Git. And it is absolutely beautiful. It's called the Git Parable, Tom Preston Werner's blog. So yeah, both of those are in the Slack now.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, that blog post, and Tom Preston Werner, man, that guy is amazing. He's done so many good things. But yeah, that story, the Git Parable, is it really makes clear, to me that this is what this thing is doing. So cool stuff.
Yeah, I was just stuck yesterday for this project. I figured out that I needed to, or I wanted to get going on a section of it that we were relying on a third party for. And I haven't touched VB in a long time, but that's what I wrote the most of back in the day. And so when I found out that their system, which is from the 90s, also uses VB, I was like, yes. So for all the custom scripts that we need to hit the services with the API, it's all written in, you can choose VB script or you can use JavaScript. And I was like, yes, okay, I can understand this, because I was having so much trouble reading what they put together. And when I tripped across this, I was like, okay.
So you're talking classic ASP there.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I remember that. And you know what? I'm really glad that I did classic ASP before I got into ASP.NET, because, ASP.NET, the idea was to try to hide the web from developers and make it so that you could create an app for the web just like you would create a Windows Forms application, and and basically just abstract everything away, and you don't even have to know that you're creating a web app. And it's not a terrible idea, but it led to a lot of terrible things. And having been, having had some experience with ASP, I actually, learned a thing or two about HTTP requests and responses and forms and, HTTP verbs and all of that stuff, which, a lot of ASP.NET web forms developers never really had to know. So I think it was a valuable experience. So I have fond memories in my heart of classic ASP. So
you go, oh, familiar.
Yeah, well, it wouldn't be familiar anymore. I mean, it was eons ago, but yeah. It was really my introduction to web programming too, right? I mean, I did a VB6. My first professional job was it was a client server application. The server was C++ and running on Linux and with Oracle database and all kinds of stuff. And then the client application was a VB6 Windows desktop application, which was it was cool. It was a neat system. But yeah, that was my intro was in VB as well, right? So that I bet, man, that's that seems like I was a different person then. That was a long time ago.
You were. Every 5 or 10 years or so, you're pretty much like, who is that guy?
Yeah. May not even take that long.
So how's the conference coming along?
It is. I am actually getting really excited about it. I'm kind of going back and forth between trying to temper my expectations, because who knows, and thinking that this could be a really big thing. So this week I sent out a bunch of emails to I did the survey, right? And so I got a bunch of responses on there, and one of the questions was what speakers would you like to see? So this week I reached out to all of the people who were listed in the survey responses as speakers that potential attendees would like to see, who have been on the show, right? So I did filter it a little bit. They've been guests on Developer on Fire. So I sent an email to everybody that was requested that has been a guest, and a lot of responses saying, yeah, let's do it. So I'm in the process of creating a page on the site now, right? Replace the existing landing page I have with a more salesy page, right? Which, I kind of feel like I'm killing kittens doing this, but, it's, yeah, creating one of those long sales pages that drive me nuts and piss me off, with
You're
all of
that
that
guy
information.
now.
Yeah. Well, I know nothing about trying to sell shit, so I might as well follow the example of people who know what they're doing, right? So yeah, creating one of those, and gonna need to figure out a way to start taking payments and all of that stuff. But yeah, I'm going to start trying to sell tickets soon. I think I've gotten to the point where I want to proceed with this thing. So, putting that page up with some names of here are some, nobody has a firm commitment at this point because I don't even have a date yet for the thing. Right. But I have a list of, A-list celebrity geeks who have agreed in principle that, yeah, I'd like to be a part of this thing and give a talk at it. So, the likes of, John Sonmez, Uncle Bob, Michael Feathers, Jonathan Stark, some real heavy hitters have, agreed to be speakers of the thing, which I think, there's really no better sales tool than that. And so, it's going to be cool.
I think Joe C on his first conference hit a home run, and he was just completely shocked. I think he said he brought over 100K on his first conference or something on his Entre Programmers group. And yeah, I mean, that sounds very awesome for the first, because he was nervous the whole time about it.
Yeah, he said that it was basically recommended from the from the original Entre Programmers, right? That he should do something like what Chuck does and do the remote conference. And yeah, I mean, his success was overwhelming, and that was the reason, right? When I talked to him, and he told me that I don't know exactly what he would want repeated. He probably was very candid in the Entre Programmers group, so it's probably not a big secret. But I'm not going to repeat what he said anyway. But yeah, his success was overwhelming, and that was why I was thinking, maybe this is my path to, I've started generating a little bit of income from the podcast, but
nice.
Not anywhere near what I need to pay my bills, right? And the remote conference very well may be the answer to that, and if it is, and that's what I'm hoping for. And I don't think it's unrealistic, but I want to temper my expectations too. But I mean, if I can do what Joe did, then it changes the game.
And to think that you can do that, either have different conferences or just do it a couple times a year or whatever, and just have this influx, and then the whole rest of the year you can plan for other stuff would be so nice.
It would be liberating. Yes. I mean, if it works out the way that I hope it does, the way that it did for Joe, and he's got his second one coming up here in just a few weeks, I think. Yeah, if I can do what he's done, or even a fraction of it, then that will be absolutely exhilarating.
I didn't know if I stole this, but the idea popped in my head, or at least the phrase popped in my head. Like, what I'm doing now isn't my passion or anything, but it's given me both the money and the time to do many other things. And it's like, even though this isn't my passion, like, this is the thing that's going to allow me to build other things.
Yeah.
And that's what I keep looking for. Okay, what's the next thing that's going to start bringing me in income, so I can hit even more of that liberated feel. So
yeah, two things come to mind from what you said there. One is playing basketball, right? I mean, everybody sees the guy handling the ball, dribbling and shooting the ball as, this is what makes for a good basketball player. But, rebounding to me is one of the biggest fundamentals of the game, right? And so, you talked about basically creating space, right? And that's what you do when you rebound, right? You stick your butt into somebody and try to take up space and get them out of the way so that you have the best chance and the best position to go get that rebound, right? Creating space. It's not glamorous, but it enables the things that help your team to succeed. And I think that's exactly what you were talking about there, right? With just, creating space is ultimately what you're doing, whether, you may not be passionate about that thing in the moment, but the more space that you can achieve. And if I can, do 2 conferences a year, and that will pay my bills, and that creates a lot of space to do all kinds of other things that could be, world changing, conceivably even. Right. So, dream big, right? So the other thing is Atlas Shrugged. You guys ever read that book?
No, I haven't. I have the ebook waiting from the library.
So I mean, it's a huge tome, right? I was for the sake of comparison, after I read that book, I was like, Jesus, this thing's long. It's taken me the whole damn summer to read it. It was a few years ago that I read it. It's 27,000 Kindle locations, right? The location is the unit of length that Kindle uses, because page, depends on your font, right? You can't really measure. So Kindle locations are an objective amount of text. Atlas Shrugged, 27,000 Kindle locations. War and Peace is 29,000. Okay. So I think that kind of gives a little bit of perspective on the length of the book.
Okay.
What Kindle do you use?
I've been through several. The first one was the white one that had the keypad on it, and that one died, and so I had to stop using that. I got kind of a next generation one. I think it was Gen 3 or something. Right now I have the Voyage. I think it's called Voyage. It is backlit, which I thought I would hate, but I actually do. It's kind of nice. I do actually use it sometimes when my wife's sleeping, so I don't have to turn on my reading light, which is kind of nice. So it is backlit, which is kind of a newer thing in the Kindles, and I like it. I really don't like the touch screen. The hardware buttons, to me, I liked them a lot more. So this one has a touch screen, which it's tolerable. It's okay, but I really liked the turn page buttons that I could touch, could just push those buttons on the thing. But I like it. It's nice. It's I splurged a little bit on this one. The Voyage is probably not quite twice the price of the entry level, the basic one, but it's
okay.
I think it is
Fire. I got the Fire thinking, I can use it but the Fire has been kind of a piece of junk, or at least the one I purchased has been a piece of junk. So I was looking to replace that come, what is it, Prime Days or whatever they call it on the 11th. So I was like, all right, I'm going to get a regular old Kindle because I've been reading so much.
So the thing is, I mean, the Fire is a tablet, right? I mean, it's got an LCD and it's running Android. I think, some, modified version of Android, right? I mean, it is a tablet. It's not a dedicated reading device. And the e-ink technology that is used in the real Kindles is it's the thing that is so easy on your eyes, right? Staring at an LCD causes the eye fatigue and all of that stuff, the eye strain. And the e-ink is basically like looking at a printed page. And that's kind of why I was a little bit leery of the backlit nature. I thought it might kind of change that a little bit, but it really hasn't seemed to. The e-ink is also, it works perfectly in direct sunlight, which LCDs are notoriously bad about. So, I think, the Kindle devices themselves, right? I mean, if you want a tablet, right, get a Surface or an iPad, right? And if you want a device for reading, then one of the Kindles is a much better choice.
Good endorsement.
Yeah, that's my thinking anyway.
So do you do Kindle Unlimited or anything?
So I heard you, Aaron. I didn't hear you, Noah. Let me just say, so Kindle Unlimited, I kind of on and off, I've done it. I'm not currently subscribed to Kindle Unlimited. I think it wound up, I mean, I don't really buy that many books because I get a lot of books from the library and stuff. So I think I've decided that I probably wind up spending more by just having that recurring fee than just by buying once in a while I want to read, Tim Ferriss's new book or something like that. I'll buy those. But for the most part, I just get books from the library. So go ahead, Noah.
I was just gonna say I'm pretty old fashioned. I use printed books for the most part, but one thing I'm curious about though is you get like a better deal. Are they cheaper? Doesn't seem like they are buying them on Kindle than getting a printed copy.
It's been a long time since I've noticed. Early on in the Kindle story, they were cheaper. I don't really. I don't pay that much attention to the relative prices. I mean, I buy Kindle. I am a religious zealot in the opposite direction. It's if it's not on my Kindle, if I really want to read something and it's not available on Kindle, I might consider reading a paper book. So, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Really, the licensing is the big thing. Well, you would think that distribution and printing and all that stuff would be costs that would, well, I guess the way they mass produce stuff, though, it's probably not really a significant difference anyway. But
I usually
don't know.
see a $3 difference between the Kindle and the book, and I always have a hard time deciding. Like, there's a lot of these, now a lot of these people are trying to get pre-orders on their books, and a lot of people I'm big fans of, so I'll do the pre-order. But then it's like, okay, you have the Kindle, you have the physical book, and you have the Audible version, and I kind of want them all at different times. So that's been tough. But usually I've gone with physical. So
that's the other nice thing with Kindle is that, if you get the Kindle and the Audible, you can, pick up where you left off between them, right? And it syncs up to where you were. So you can, I need to go to work, so now I'm going to listen to this thing in the car and, on the way to work, that kind of thing. So, which I don't typically take advantage of, because when I put down my book and then I listen to podcasts, and I hardly ever listen to audiobooks. But because I am so oversubscribed to podcasts and I'm so hopelessly behind that I'll never catch up. So, if I ever catch up on my podcast feeds, which would mean I have to unsubscribe some, then I'll probably do some audiobooks. But for the most part, my reading is still traditional, not in the paper sense, but in the written word sense.
I listened to some audiobooks, and I just find my retention is not the same.
Really? Huh.
I definitely remember things a lot more clearly and more completely if I read it in paper form.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That's what I had to do. I had to switch to that. I found out that I was not like weird, if everybody in the group was agreeing to read a book or whatever, like they would pick it up on Audible and then we talk about it and they would just regurgitate everything. I was like, I listened to it and I got nothing. And so I've been going to the library and getting physical books now and reading, and because it was not working for me, and I wish it did, because Audible I love Audible, but the retention for me was horrible. So unless I can get there some other way, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, my expectation would be what you just said, Noah, that you would retain more from reading than listening. But I mean, I really have no way of knowing. So that squares with my intuition, what you said there.
And depends what you're reading, right? And how much it matters. So.
Yeah.
It's strange. There's almost a peculiar way that the visual input on the printed page is interacting with my memory, because I mean, sometimes I can even distinctly remember the forms that the letters are making on the page for a piece and associate with a piece of information that I recall from the book, or that I want to reference again.
You might have some element. I was going to say, you might have some element of a photographic memory or something along those lines.
Yeah, I don't know.
Just call it a superpower.
I don't remember everything to that level of detail, and it definitely seems to have gotten worse over the past decade or so too. But just certain things like that will stand out to me sometimes, and I will not get that, from listening to an audiobook whatsoever.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned kind of your memory degrades with age, and I think that's absolutely true. I think I had a traumatic event that caused me to have an impairment in my cognitive abilities and my memory and stuff, and it was a concussion. And I think that changed a lot in the way that my mind works. And, I mean, it's not scientific at all, right? It's all, kind of conjecture and guesswork. But one thing that I've noticed since that event was that I now, handwriting, right? Not keyboarding, but handwriting stuff, I will transpose characters in some of the words that I write, just put stuff in the wrong order. Oh. And I suspect I may have developed some form of dyslexia from that concussion, which I don't know if that's possible, but that's my experience, which is kind of weird. I mean, there was never a problem growing up, and it might be something with practice too, right? I mean, I don't write on paper very often anymore, which might have something to do with it, I guess. But yeah, that concussion was kind of a big deal to me. It was playing a basketball game. That was a funny story too. I'll tell you about that if you want to hear it.
Go for it.
So, I was playing this basketball game in a league, right? With some of my high school buddies, and I apparently, right. The funny thing is everything I know about that is hearsay, right? I do not have any recollection of the event itself, or really even that whole day before that. That is pretty much wiped from my memory. So the way my friends told me was that there's a loose ball on the floor, and I went diving after it. There was a guy kind of was a little bit ahead of me, and so I'm diving on the floor trying to get my hands on this ball, and I kind of clipped the guy's leg, right, so that he kind of turned and came down on top of me, and apparently his ass drove my head into the floor. Is kind of how the thing happened, right? According to what I heard. So, which doesn't surprise me at all, because that's kind of how I play basketball. I'm on the floor probably more than I'm on my feet, but so they said that after the game, I was down for a bit, and then I came out of the game, and this was in the first half of the game, and like into the second half, I decided I was good enough to play, and so I played. After that in the game, we were kind of sitting there in the gym, standing, just kind of sitting around talking, and they told me that I just kind of was asking, so did we win, right? And yeah, we won the game. Did I play good? was my next question, and that these same questions, right? I would ask it, and then a few minutes later, I would ask the same question again. And so, and then I went and threw up in the trash can, and that was when they were like, okay, we gotta get to the hospital. So, I went and, CAT scan and all of that stuff, right, and everything. And so the funny thing is that they said that, like, I'm sitting there in the emergency room, and like the receptionist, they're there in the emergency room. They said that I asked her for her phone number multiple times, right? Same thing, asking the same stuff over and over again. Said that every time that there was a nurse that would walk by, that I was making comments about the nurse's appearance every time that she walked by, right? And they said that I was commenting that I was hungry. And so, it was like, they would say, well, okay, give me some cash. I'll go run and pick something up for you, right? And pretty soon they had all of my cash, all of my credit cards, all this stuff out of my wallet, right? So, allegedly, right? I have no recollection of any of this stuff, but yeah, it sounds like it was pretty fun to be around me that night.
That's what friends are for, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
so
funny but sad at the same time. That's
yeah. Oh, and my boss then told me that he got this voicemail, right, on his voicemail that's saying that, hey, I'm not going to be at work tomorrow, and I said a bunch of unintelligible stuff that he couldn't understand, but that he got the gist that something happened and that I wasn't going to be able to make it to work the next day. So.
Was he suspicious at all?
Yeah, he didn't say anything about that.
Okay, no judging. Okay.
So yeah, that was kind of a fun and crazy thing, but I think it has impacted me for the worse. Another thing that I kind of have noticed since then is that I had never, getting absolutely just tanked drunk, right? Even getting loaded out of my mind, I never had any problem with not remembering what happened before that. And then after, this was all before I was married, of course, right? As you might gather from but I would go to the bar and come home, and I'm putting my clothes in the laundry the next day, and I find a matchbook with a woman's phone number in it, and I'm like, I don't recall. I have no idea, where this came from.
Then you go, oh no.
Yeah.
Oh,
no. So.
Or oh yeah, it depends who was on the other line, I guess.
Yeah, who knows, right? Yeah, I don't think I ever called that number to find out. Yeah.
Someday I'm sure you have it hidden somewhere, right?
I'm not that crazy.
Yeah, I've noticed, I've come to the realization that, I don't know, maybe I should have known it before, but you hear about people, they get injured or go have some kind of near death or bad experience like that. And they get better and they seem fine afterward, but they never really are in most cases. I've found there's always something that sticks with you forever. Your life has changed in some way.
Yeah, yeah.
After that point, so
literature reveals so much, right? I think of, people will probably get sick of hearing me say it because I'm so enamored with Harry Potter. But at the end of the fourth book, right? Where well, Harry's friend is murdered, right? Frenemy, I guess you could say, right? Is murdered at the end of the fourth book, and then in the fifth book, he comes back to school, and the carriages that are self-drawn are all of a sudden now drawn by these, bony skeletal horse creatures, right? And ultimately the punchline is that you can't see these things, right? All along they were pulling these carriages. They weren't self-propelled, but that Harry couldn't see these creatures. And the magic of these things is that you can only see them if you've seen death. And I think that is it's revealing in that it does fundamentally change something in you. Right, that these kinds of traumatic experiences cause a shift that maybe not externally perceptible, but it does change your very nature. Right, there's something inside of you that is now never the same, and so I think that's along the lines of what you were saying.
Yeah, no, I think that's very much so. Yeah.
I'll have to read Harry Potter now.
I know people who have had experiences like that. Had one of my own, and it's just there's no going back after that.
Yeah. Well, and I think I love Harry Potter more than I should because of that I read it with my daughters, right?
There you go. Okay.
We read all of those books together, and it was just such a great experience that they kind of they grew up with it, right? I mean that was we tackled this 7-volume just, I mean, it's huge, right? And we went through that together, and it was a part of their, I mean, not that they learned to read with this, right? I mean, they were a little bit beyond, the basics, but it was, a big part of their journey into reading. And it's one of the big reasons I think that my girls they absolutely love to read. And they, I mean, it's my oldest, it's her favorite thing to do in the world. You give her a book and, she'll take that over anything.
That's great. See, and I'm getting back into reading partly because the last classes were on a bunch of topics I did not care to explore much of. And I ended up just like, okay, I have to retain this stuff because so much of the other stuff was computer stuff that I was like, oh, I get it. And it stuck with me. But a bunch of the liberal arts classes, I was just like, I don't care about this. And I was like, oh, I don't know how to read. I don't know how to read, and I don't have proper retention, and I got to work on this. And now all of a sudden I have way too many books from the library. I'm just trying to avoid fees. But I brought home like a stack of like 10, and then I kind of didn't even think that you have to return them eventually. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to get this done in 2 weeks. So
yeah.
But trying to get better at that. So.
Yeah, I took my girls to the library once, and and my son, right? But between the 3 kids, and I mean, I think my son probably checked out 5 books or something like that. But between the 3 of them, there was over 50 books that we checked out. And I mean, the girls got through. I mean, I think we renewed, 6 of them or something like that, right? I mean, they got through a ton. And, I mean, they're shorter books than what you and I would read, but they read like fiends.
Yeah, in your defense, Dave, I think those are really great stories. So I don't have any problem with you referencing them. They're very complex, very well written, very nuanced in so many different ways. So
yeah, and hooks into all of the elements.
Those are definitely.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. No, they're definitely ones I would read to my children when they're older. They're not ready yet, but I was thinking the other day, like my daughter has this book of Disney stories, but they're all written in a very plain narrative form. They're very short, abridged versions. It's just like, this is terrible. I almost don't even want to read this to her because this is horrible storytelling. There's nothing here other than, describing something as if you were describing a recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. When the movie tells the story better than the book does, you know that something is wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So did they have to read the books and then see the movies, or have they not seen the movies?
We basically did. Once we finished a book, then we would see that movie. So
Okay.
that was kind of the approach that we took with it. So I could have insisted, no, we're not going to see any of them until we finish it all. But they were clamoring to see the movies. They really
that was a nice little carrot to dangle. So.
Yeah, I mean, it took us probably a year and a half to read through all the books. It was, it started with, they were littler, and we would take turns reading out loud, and, go among the three of us. And about partway through the fourth book, my oldest started saying, you know what, I want to read this on my own, so she started reading ahead and some of that stuff. And so we kind of gradually eased out of reading aloud, and we would just kind of sit in the room together and we would all read. And once we all finished the chapter, then we would talk about it and stuff like that. So that was kind of the evolving approach over time, and it worked, and it was great. And actually Harry Potter was perfect for it too, because the earlier books are a lot easier to read, right? It basically, as Harry grows, so does the complexity of the topics and the complexity of the narrative. And so it's kind of tailor-made for a kid growing up to kind of, grow with the book. And it's like you said, no, it's beautifully written, so deep, so much detail, right? I mean, she's written textbooks that are the textbooks that they were using in the school, right? I mean, her invention of this wizarding world is it is breathtaking how thoughtful, how much she put into it. And it is. I don't know that I would even say that George Lucas has surpassed her, which is very high praise.
No, it's very reminiscent of Tolkien to me.
Yeah.
I mean, he applied that same kind of level of detail to all his writing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like
languages and whatnot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's what I was just thinking. So yeah, totally good stuff. And yeah, I do recommend it when your kids get older. I mean, that was one of the, one of my really fond memories of my kids, the experiences I've had with them is reading those books together.
Was that a bedtime thing or whenever thing?
It was some of both. I mean, we pretty much had every night before bed, we had reading time for a half hour to an hour or whatever it was. Right. So it was, bedtime, but then there were days that was like, Dad, we got to read this chapter, right? So we that kind of stuff. I took a trip once to a conference, right? I was off to this conference, and I was sitting in my hotel room over Skype, and we were reading, didn't miss our reading time for that. So that was kind of cool too.
Solid.
Yeah.
Yay technology.
Indeed.
I'm glad you mentioned the reading together in a room, read the chapter, talk about it. That's an interesting idea. I hadn't really thought about that. So
yeah,
I may try that at some point when they get older.
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we started with just read aloud, right? We would just take turns, right? Me reading to them turned into them reading some of it. And, which it's an evolution, as they get bigger and are more capable, then they do more. And yeah,
yeah.
I forget, Aaron, how old are you? I mean, you have two kids, right?
Yep. 6 months and a little over 2 years.
Yeah. So. Still very little. Yeah.
Yeah. But the older one, we have, I guess, fake reading to the younger one at this point. So he'll say that the animal he sees on the page and then gibberish and then
That's
turn
cool.
the page. So
yeah. My wife is an early childhood educator. She's teaching preschool now, but she taught kindergarten before having our kids and quitting that career basically. And that was one of the things that she really looked for, was that kids, that if they would open up the books, look at the pictures, and tell a story, that was an important developmental step. So I think that's probably a good sign that you've got them doing that.
Good. Either us or daycare is paying off. So.
Yeah. So yeah, trying to sound like an expert on childhood development, right? Which I am certainly not, but that is what I did gather from my wife, who I think knows a few things about that stuff.
Yeah, that's a handy skill to have at home. So
indeed, yeah, cool.
Yeah,
well, dudes,
my
I should
kids are.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they're only about a few months older than yours there, and about the same time frame apart. So we're in very similar boats there.
Perfect. We're shooting for a little bit more space for the next one, but yeah.
Yeah, my first two were 14 months apart, so they were very close, and I think that's part of it too, right? My son is then 2 years younger than my younger daughter, so there's a bigger gap, and that's kind of why the reading Harry Potter was just the girls, and the boy wasn't there yet, so he was left out of that, which is unfortunate, but yeah, the bigger gap, it has its benefits, but it also kind of separates being able to be close to on the same level with some of these other things as well.
Yeah. No, that's more of my wife's choice than, because she takes care of most of those struggles. So
yeah.
Good deal.
Well, I should probably get back to the family. What else do you guys want to mention before we depart?
I don't really have anything else. Noah, you?
No, I think I'm good. I think we had a good talk.
Yeah, definitely. This was fun.
We'll see you next week.
All right. Stopping broad.